This college football season will be unlike anything we've ever seen before. With the college football playoff expanding to 12 teams, a bunch more teams will be in the mix much later in the season. But in the end, who makes the playoff? Who wins it all? Those are just some of the big picture national topics I'm going to tackle this week with Tulsa World columnist Berry Tramel coming up on the Jenni Carlson Show. Before we get to that, though, I want to encourage you to subscribe. First, subscribe to my YouTube channel, at Jenni-Carlson. Just hit that subscribe button. It's free for you, but it sure helps me a ton, so please subscribe today. Then I hope you subscribe to my Substack, Beyond the Box Score. You can subscribe for free, or if you want to support my work with a paid subscription, you can do so for $8 a month. I hope you consider doing that at jennicarlson.substack.com. Well, Berry, how are you? How are things going this week?
I'm all fired up, Jacko. I got the weather forecast for Saturday. Going to be in the 70s, high in the 70s. That's crazy. So that'll sustain me for 2 or 3 days. This heat's wearing me out.
Yeah, definitely starting to feel a little more fall-like if that comes through this weekend. That will be great. That will feel like football, but we are knee-deep in it already. Practice is underway. Media days in the rearview mirror. We talked last week about OU and OSU, some predictions. Let's look even bigger picture this week as we think about the college football playoff, changing the landscape of college football, expanding it from 4 to 12. As we know, the top 4 conference champs in the rankings get those first-round byes. I think everybody's kind of assuming that will be the Power 4 champs, but if a group of 5 champ is higher, they get one of those byes. So let's start here. Who are your top 4 seeds in the playoff, Berry?
Well, I got a couple of surprises. I'm actually going to go Oregon number 1. The Ducks have a pretty manageable Big Ten schedule. They don't play Penn State or USC. So Michigan and Ohio State are their chief competitors. I actually think we'll have an Ohio State-Oregon championship game, and I'm going to pick the Ducks to win it. I think number 2, coming out of the SEC, I've got an upset here, and I think if they win this game, even if their record is maybe 11-2, I'm picking Ole Miss to win the SEC.
Wow!
I think I'm just not sold on Texas. I mean, I think they're going to be good, but I think Texas might make the SEC championship game. But I think the Rebels could beat them. I think Georgia has a very tough schedule. They go to Austin, and they go to Oxford, and they go to Tuscaloosa. And if they win 2 or 3, they're going to be in Atlanta. But if they lose 2 or 3, who knows? So going off the wall, and I'm picking Ole Miss. Number 3 out of the ACC, I got Florida State. You know, I don't know that anybody's going to shine in the ACC, but I know out of the 4 prime contenders, Florida State, Clemson, Miami, and Louisville, from what ACC people say, they play a pretty equitable schedule. And I just think Florida State's got it going. I think Mike Norvell's a very good coach. I think they're going to be playing for a lot of pride. I just think they'll emerge out of the ACC. And then in the Wild, Wild West, which includes Central Florida, West Virginia, and Cincinnati, but go along with me. The Big 12, I am going to go with, I guess, Kansas State. I have no idea between K-State, Utah, and OSU. I'm just a big believer in Chris Kleiman. I think their schedule is fairly manageable. Nobody really has a big advantage in the schedule, but I think Kansas State probably is my pick at number 4, and it would not surprise me if no team gets through the end of this Big 12 season with only 1 loss in conference.
Yeah, no, I think that's entirely possible. I thought it was interesting your first pick of Oregon and Ohio State. That'd be a matchup of former Big 12 quarterbacks in that Big 10 championship game.
And that's another reason to like K-State. They sort of said goodbye to 3-year starter Will Howard and said, well, we don't really need you. So he went to Ohio State. So if Avery Johnson, the guy that K-State's going to hand the ball to, if he's good enough for you to just throw off your quarterback to Ohio State, you must be pretty good.
Yeah, no doubt, no doubt. Yeah, I like Oregon. I definitely think they're my leader just because of, I like Dylan Gabriel so much of what he brings to the Ducks. I think he's going to fit in beautifully with their offense that Dan Lanning and company are running out there in Eugene. So I love Oregon. I don't know if they'll be the number 1 seed, but I think they're in as the Big Ten champ. I'm going to go. Last week when we talked Big 12 champs, I said Oklahoma State wins the Big 12 title game. So I'm sticking with the Cowboys as a top 4 seed. Again, don't know where exactly they'd slot in, but I suspect they'll be there. And because of what you said, Barry, the fact that the Big 12 is unlikely to have a 1-loss team, I could see Oklahoma State or the Big 12 champ, whoever it ends up being the 4 seed because of that. I think Florida State has a great chance to be a high seed 1 or 2 just because of the ACC. Maybe not being as strong as it has been in some years. So Florida State, I've also got in. Then I'm going Georgia out of the SEC. I still think the Bulldogs are the team to beat in the SEC. And I agree with you. I think that the rankings suggest it's going to be hard to come through the SEC this year, maybe as hard as ever with the top heaviness of the league and how good the top 6, 7, 8 teams are. But I like Georgia to be in the playoff as one of those top 4 conference champ seeds, which, as we've talked, neither of us have a group of 5 in the top 4. So who do you think that group of 5 champ is that gets into the playoff this year?
I think there's a lot of teams you could look at, but I'm going to go with an oldie but goldie, and that's Boise State winning the Mountain West. I really think the committee's going to have a little bit of I think they sobered up after last year's selection of Liberty over SMU. No way was Liberty better than SMU. Liberty played the easiest schedule in America. And I think that was a vote just to end the meeting and go have dinner. And I think there'll be a lot more reckoning this year for that. So I don't think somebody like Liberty can go 13-0 against a pretty easy schedule. If somebody in the Sun Belt came through 13-0, that league has gotten really good. But otherwise, I think you're looking at Memphis, Tulane, whoever wins the American versus Boise State, or whoever wins the Mountain West. And I think Boise State, of course, they play the Ducks. So I don't know that they're going to go unbeaten. But I do think a 12-1 Boise State would look awfully attractive. I'm going to go with the Broncos.
It's a good pick. A team that's obviously been in the mix. And for all the years that, they had great teams and weren't able to make anything close to a New Year's Six bowl, I think it'd be fitting if they were the group of 5. But how about this team, Barry? What about Texas State? J.G. Kinney, the former Tulsa quarterback, and our old buddy Kelly Damphus as the president at Texas State. What about the Bobcats making the playoff?
Well, here's what about the Bobcats. You have made college football history, Jacko, by making a selection based on who is the chief administrator at a school. It's not nobody who's got a whistle or shoulder pads is involved. It's just who's running the university. So sign me up. Sign me up for Texas State out of San Marcos. They host Arizona State early, and if they could beat Texas State, if they could beat Arizona State, and I sort of think they will, the Sun Devils are not going to be very good, then they'll get on the radar, and then you got some launching power. So that would be very much fun. So let's go the Fighting Kelly Damphus.
What about group of 5? Is there a chance that a second group of 5 gets in, or is it just? We don't know what this first year is going to look like. It's not been something we've seen before with a second group of 5 potentially being in. They would have to be in probably definitely the top 12 to make that playoff. But is there a chance that we have more than one group of 5, or is that just where we're going to be in this first year of the playoff?
If there is a second team to make it, it would have to be a stealth selection, one that has not been ranked near the top 12 in the weekly rankings leading up to the final rankings. Because if we did have, let's say, a Boise State at 9 or a Memphis at 12, in late November, or Texas State and Tulane, or whatever the combination would be, then the operatives at the Big Ten Conference and the SEC would descend upon the Gaylord Texan, and we'd have a new committee. That'd be a banana republic would be running college football. So no chance that's happening. We might have the SEC and the Big Ten might withdraw from the NCAA, form their own confederation before the conference championship games. If that were to occur, we might just have mass revolution.
Would it have been more or less revolutionary if an SEC team had not gotten in last year? You were certain if no SEC team gets in last year, the committee needed to bar the doors and lock the windows, or they're coming after them.
The blood would have run to the horses' bridles, Jacko.
Okay, so talking about the SEC, then the Big Two. Let's talk SEC with the Sooners conference. How many SEC teams get in this playoff? I mean, we've obviously heard Greg Sankey and others beating the drum for a minimum number to come out of the SEC. That hasn't been done yet. But what's your best guess with so many good teams at the top of the SEC? Is it 5? Is it more? What's the number for SEC teams in this expanded playoff?
I think we're going to have 4 Big Ten teams, 4 SEC teams. We've got 3 slots reserved for the Big 12, ACC, group of 5. And then I think Notre Dame is going to have a very good year and make the playoff. And if that happens, then we've got 8 slots left. And I think, a bunch of Solomons are on the committee. I don't think they're going to go 5-3 with the SEC and Big Ten. So my guess is 4 SEC, 4 Big Ten. Now, if the Big Ten proves to be pretty mediocre in the middle, and then, USC and Michigan both are not very good, you could see the SEC getting an extra at the expense of the Big Ten. Or let's say Utah or K-State or whoever goes unbeaten, goes to Arlington and gets upset.
Right.
I don't think they would knock those teams out of the playoff. So I think they could conceivably get a spot also. But barring those kind of developments, I think you're looking at 4-4 and then, adjusting from there.
So I was going to ask you about how many Big 12 teams, obviously Oklahoma State in the mix there. It sounds like 1 might be more likely than 2 out of the Big 12.
That's how I see it, don't you?
I mean, I think what you said before would probably have to be the scenario, an undefeated team losing in the Big 12 title game, and then maybe that 1-loss team that made Arlington might make the playoff. But other than that, I think it will be tough.
Maybe if we had 2 11-1 teams in Arlington, and they go into that final week ranked 7th and 9th, I think it'd be unjust to drop them out from that point. But if you're looking at, 11-1 and a 10-2 team, Utah versus K-State or Utah versus OSU or OSU versus K-State, or we could have dark horse, Central Florida, I don't care, Texas State, doesn't matter. I just think there's a lot of political pressure not to give the SEC and the Big Ten maximum slots. And I didn't really catch this, Jacko, or maybe I did and forgot about it, but I went back and read Brett Yormark's comments at his opening statements at Big 12 Media Days. We were there together, and one thing he said, talking about the playoffs, he said, we'll have 1 team in the playoff, hopefully 2, probably 2. But that did not resonate with me as a resounding vote of confidence on their status for the playoff. This is a guy with endless confidence, endless optimism, boundless energy, and he sort of threw us a trial balloon that said, we're probably not going to be thrilled come that committee announcement at the end of the season.
Yeah, it seems like to me maybe the best case scenario for the Big 12 is, obviously we know that Oklahoma State plays Utah and K-State to start the year. Let's say Oklahoma State's in the mix. They beat those 2 teams, then they go undefeated, and they lose to one of those teams that's only lost to Oklahoma State. Like, let's say they beat Utah, run the table, then Utah also runs the table and beats Oklahoma State. To me, they've both beat each other. I think I could see that scenario where it's almost impossible to leave out the team that got beat in the championship game. I guess they could, but it feels like that's the type of scenario the Big 12 needs to wish for, which is weird because, I think one of the things I've thought about with this expanded playoff is it's not going to be as mandatory to have that blemish-free record. But with the SEC and the Big Ten coming to play like they are, winning all of your games is definitely it's not as out of the picture as I thought it would be as this playoff expanded.
Yeah, and I think you're right, but that sort of spotlights the Big 12's problem, right? If they want to get a second team in,
yeah,
it's a narrow window. I mean, it's a tight canal.
Yeah,
and it's not a tight canal for a Michigan or Tennessee or Penn State or an Ole Miss. So Big 12 just needs all kinds of things to go right to get a second team in, and a third team in is just hallucinations. So it'll be interesting to see how the committee ranks teams.
Yeah.
There in the early Novembers and then through the month, just seeing how things work out. But I do think a thing to look at is how does the committee treat SEC teams and maybe Big Ten teams that are not playing tough schedules. Let me give you 3 examples. Missouri, Ole Miss, Texas. They have the 3 easiest schedules in the SEC, conference schedules.
Yeah.
Texas is playing Michigan, so salute to the Longhorns. But Ole Miss, their non-conference opponent is Wake Forest. Missouri's is Boston College. I mean, they play some very easy schedules.
Yeah.
So if they put in a 10-2, it's not automatic that Missouri's 10-2 is better than Kansas State's 10-2.
Sure.
It's not automatic that Ole Miss's 10-2 is better than Utah's 10-2. Will the committee give it legitimate analyzation, legitimate analysis, or are they just going to say, they're in the SEC, they played an SEC schedule, advanced to go? So that's something to look at.
Yeah, definitely a lot of unknowns as it relates to the committee and how they evaluate some of these things. Something else that's hard to know is who falls in the 5th through 8th seeds. We may not know exactly who are going to be in those spots, but do you have any dream wish list of places you'd like to see those? And those 5 through 8, as most people know, 5 through 8, home on campus sites. So if you're 5 to 8, you get to host. So who is in the wish list of places, Barry, you'd like to see on campus first round playoff games this year?
I want to see as many teams as possible east of the Rockies and north of the Mason-Dixon line.
So as cold as can be.
I want to see some Deep South teams have to go north. I want to see Alabama play at, I don't know, Penn State, or send Ole Miss to K-State in December. You're from the northern hills of Kansas, Jacko. You know what it's like in mid-December. I don't know that LSU's ready for that. They got better ball players, but
it's cold.
19 degrees and the wind's whipping in Manhattan. So that would be a fun ball game. Got some snow, maybe snows in Ann Arbor, and you've got I don't know. We got some Texas is going to Michigan. Alabama's going to Wisconsin, but they're going in September. Who cares?
Not the same, exactly.
Put them up there in December and let's see what you got.
Hey, one of the most impressive things I ever saw on a football field, one year Oklahoma went to K-State. I think it was a November game. It might have been Baker Mayfield quarterbacking the Sooners. It was a cold, windy, raw day in Manhattan, Kansas. One of the most impressive things I've ever seen were the K-State marching band twirlers standing on the field before the game in there was no warm weather or cold weather gear. They were in the normal outfits. They stood there at attention for, I don't know, 10 minutes, 15 minutes. I was sitting next to Ryan Aber, our old Oklahoman buddy, and we weren't sure if they'd frozen in place or if they were still at attention. They actually came out of it, did their thing, but it had to have been freezing. But that was in October or November. So yeah. You're right. Some of these places could be a real trick for some teams to navigate. Yeah, I think anywhere that sort of brings the variation of weather into the equation, I'm all for. So, yeah, I'm with you on the cold weather.
Stillwater could be a play. The Cowboys are capable of 5 through 8.
Yep.
Send us a team to Oklahoma and try the wind sweeping down the plain in December. See how it is.
That's right. Okay, so last thing about the playoff. Who emerges from this thing, Barry? Who wins the national championship this year?
I'm picking Georgia. I'm not picking them to win the SEC, but I am picking them to win the national title. I think they're the best team. I think they were the best team last year. They clearly were the best team the previous 2 years. I just think Kirby Smart has it going. He got a tough schedule. The SEC had all kinds of lines of demarcation, tough schedule, not tough. Georgia got one of the tough ones, hosting Ole Miss, Texas, and Alabama. That could hurt their chances to get to Atlanta and win it. But when we get to the bracket, when we get to the tournament, I think Georgia is going to be very tough to beat.
Yeah, I think the Bulldogs are a tough out in the playoff. It'll be interesting if they don't win the SEC, as you predict. They'll be one of those first-round hosts down in Athens, I would assume. Very likely that they're hosting, and then they have that extra game on their bodies, if you will. What does that look like? Playing an extra game, that will be fascinating. Those teams that play those first-round games, can one of them emerge? Feels like a program like Georgia is probably among the few that could have that extra game and probably still survive. I like Oregon also as a contender for the national championship. I think obviously the Pac-12 was pretty jam-packed at the top last year. They obviously lost a couple times to Washington, a team that we saw play for a national championship. So I like what's going on at Oregon. I like their new quarterback. I think he's a heck of a player. And the last prediction we'll have about college football is the Heisman, which leads me to say, I think Dylan Gabriel is going to win the Heisman Trophy this year, Barry. Who's your Heisman winner?
Well, I think Gabriel's a great pick. That would be really cool for the Sooners to keep having Heisman Trophy winners either playing for them or used to play for them. That would be 4 in 8 years. So, but having gone out on the limb and picked Ole Miss to win the SEC, if Ole Miss wins the SEC, Jackson Dart's going to win the Heisman Trophy. So yeah. I guess I guess I'm running a parlay there. So if Jackson Dart and Dylan Gabriel finish 1-2, that would be a cool Heisman finish. It's a matchup of the two quarterbacks OU recruited in the portal the month, or the week, the day that Caleb Williams hit the road. So. Yeah. People forget that OU went after Jackson Dart and ended up with Dylan Gabriel. Ole Miss is fine with Dart. OU was fine with Gabriel. So I'm going to go with Jackson Dart as a stealth candidate.
I think it's a good one. And here's my last Heisman-related prediction. I think Ollie Gordon makes the finals. I think he's in New York. I think he's going to have the kind of season that gets him whatever that upper echelon of votes is. They never say it's 3 or 5 or whatever. They have some sort of, as the votes come in, they see where the natural cutoff is and then invite how many ever they see fit. I think Ollie's got a good chance to be there. That would be a huge thing for him, for Oklahoma State. Don't be surprised if Ollie Gordon's in New York for the Heisman Trophy announcement. All right, quick lightning round, Barry, before we get out of here. It's Olympic related. We're going to throw a curveball at folks as we sit here, the Olympics in Paris winding down. I've been watching. I know you've been watching. Do you have a favorite Olympic person or personality during these games?
Yes, I do. I did. I don't know if I still do. But Clark Kent, our resident gymnast. I'm sitting there watching the pommel horse guy. He's sitting there waiting, and they finally show him. And I said, this guy looks like Clark Kent. Unbeknownst to me, literally 7 million Americans said the exact same thing that night. So it's not, my brilliance was not quite as grand as I thought it was.
Yeah.
But he seemed like just such an affable guy and a cool character. And he gets on the pommel horse, which is the toughest. Well, the rings are bare too. But, man, some of those male apparatuses.
Sure.
And that pommel horse is just a gut grind, and for him to produce like he did, he became one of my favorites of the Olympians I've seen. Plus, I give it up to a bevy of American track athletes and swimmers who produced unbelievable drama. It seemed like every other race was a thriller down to the wire with a big comeback, somebody sneaking through at the end, whether it was the 1,500 meters or the 100 meters. So great drama on the track and in the swimming hole.
Yeah, Quincy Hall wins the 400 last night, and I swear when he came around the curves to come into the home stretch, I thought, this guy's going to pass out. He's struggling. His face was all contorted, and then he kicked at the end and won in miraculous fashion, just one of those many big wins at the end. And Ned Arondek, the pommel horse guy, my favorite thing about him is that he hangs his glasses on the edge of the chalk bowl.
Yeah.
It's just so unassuming. It's like, let me leave these here while I go win a medal for my country. I'll be right back. So my favorite person to come out of these Olympics, Snoop Dogg. I got to admit, Snoop Dogg is taken over.
I almost interrupted you and made a joke and said something. You were going to say Snoop Dogg. And I was going to be 100% silly. And here you go and say Snoop Dogg.
He's become charming. How did that happen?
When's he is he charming on Peacock? I haven't seen it on NBC yet. For crying out loud. He's actually he's not as annoying as I thought he was going to be. I'll give you that, but oh my goodness.
Okay. All right. So you disagree, but what about this? What's your favorite Olympic sport been this go around, Barry?
I always loved the track and field. I liked it when I was a kid. I mean, I guess that's the first sign that I was a sports nut. I liked track and field. Even the semis in the first round are semi-interesting. So I just love the track and field. I love the sports where it's clear-cut winning. You don't have to wait for judges. You don't have to wait for numbers. Just see who wins the race or finishes second or whatever the case. So, and like I said, the drama has been great. And we've seen a lot of good foreign stuff. You know, the pole vaulter, Duplantis from Lafayette, Louisiana, who, wins the gold for Sweden. I'm not sure he knows how to spell Sweden. And he lived all his life in Louisiana, but his mother's Swedish, and the U.S. apparently wouldn't let his dad be his Olympic coach. So he said, okay, I'm going to jump for Sweden. Maybe a missed call on the USOC's part, but no, I like all that. I found a little bit of drama there in the even in the discus. Although I will sign the petition that eliminates the hammer throw. We should not be throwing hammers. I don't care how many nets you got around it. So get rid of the hammer throw, and the track meet would be fantastic.
But you're okay with the javelin? Let him throw something pointy.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know. I guess the javelin seems like maybe something you could dodge easier, but that hammer coming through you, probably whirling. I don't know.
Okay, well, anti-hammer. I will say the one that I don't get to watch a lot, but I'm fascinated by is water polo. And quite honestly, I think they could make it even better if they do like a split screen and on the bottom they show us what's happening underneath the water. Because occasionally they show what's happening underneath there, and it's like a leg wrestling underwater. They're killing each other under there. So like, give me the underwater view all the time, and I'm definitely into water polo 100%. So that's my favorite. Okay, last one. If you practiced enough, is there an Olympic sport you could actually be good at?
Are you talking about when I was 17 or now that I'm 63? I mean,
go for athletic prime, sure.
I'm out of the business of Olympic contention. Oh, the answer is no. The answer is no. Let's just be honest. But there are some things that people do. If you don't have to have the right gene pool, I don't think, to be a great archer or a great shooter.
Yeah.
With a rifle.
Could you be like the guy that won the shooting silver with his hand in his pocket and no special stuff?
Yeah, I enjoyed that fellow. I sure did. That was cool. But I think, if somebody wants to do that, if we're in the Winter Games, skill and technical expertise are not necessarily required. I mean, if you're Herschel Walker, you can wake up one day and say, I think I'll be a bobsledder. And
that's true.
You're on the bobsled team.
That's true.
So, The only flaw in that theory for this question is I happen to not be Herschel Walker. So I better go back to the bow and arrow or the skeet shooting or something.
I would be, if I went back to when I was actually, youthful-ish, rugby fascinated me, watching the rugby, because there were all sorts of body types. I mean, obviously, in the men's side, it was very sort of, muscular and big for the most part. But the women's side, it was kind of a hodgepodge. I mean, that would have been sort of, rugby was not even on the radar for me in North Central Kansas. But, I know that it's around. That one sort of fascinates me. I don't know if I could do it, but I sure would like to try, or maybe would have liked to have tried when I was younger. Can't do it now.
Well, they had the best finish of any game.
They did. They did.
Ran 90 yards on the last play of the game.
Very good. Yeah, that was a lot of fun. All right, before we let you out of here, Barry, what you got coming up in the Tulsa World?
I'm writing about the issue we talked about quite a bit, the college football playoff for this weekend and how it's going to change the landscape so profoundly. And I also, today, I had a column on Steve Spurrier Jr., the former OU assistant, who now is the Tulsa offensive coordinator. I still thought of Steve as, the cocky little 27-year-old who was on Bob Stoops' staff, his first full-time job. Steve Spurrier Jr. is 52 years old. He's got a son in OU Medical School. So, time marches on, but he's up there with Kevin Wilson at Tulsa. So, catching up with Steve Spurrier Jr. in today's Tulsa World.
Go check out that column on Coach Spurrier. He talked about that. Enjoyed reading that. That's at tulsaworld.com/sports/subscribe, whatever you need to get to it. Check that out. Barry, thanks for joining us this week.
You bet.
That's all the time we have for now, but please subscribe to my YouTube channel and my Substack, Beyond the Box Score. It's easy and it's free, but if you want to support my work financially, I'd appreciate that too. You can do that via my Substack at jennicarlson.substack.com. Also, you can find this episode and all episodes of The Jenni Carlson Show on your favorite podcast app. If you like what you hear, please leave a review. Quick word of thanks to my video dream team, Jacqueline Musgrove and Michael Lane. Thanks for joining me, and we'll see you next time.